Last week, I talked about Dark Void, a game I loved and hated in equal measure. This time around, it's a different contest of opinions. One of the most hated Alien games that has somehow turned into something of a cult game for some people. This is Aliens Colonial Marines! Okay, hold up. There is no way we are talking about this game without a heavy dose of context. If you don't know what went on with this game, then click on these annotations for some excellent videos by Jim Sterling on the issue. He'll put it quite succinctly. Done? Excellent! Personally, I'm more of an Alien fan than an Aliens fan, so nostalgia doesn't actually hold much sway for me here. My only real personal attachment to this game is that it killed Timegate. And seeing as that Timegate made Section 8 Prejudice and Fear Perseus Mandate, my review for which you can click here to see and understand just how much I actually liked that, and I liked Timegate's work, that's a bit of a damn shame. I hate it when I see a good studio crumble because of someone else's mistakes. I'm not trying to make bad blood here between me and Gearbox, but I'm really still not happy with them over all of this. To be honest, considering the circumstances, I'm amazed that with only a few patches the game runs as well as it does. The odds were stacked against Timegate and its fellow outsourced studios, but they managed to release anyway. The original launch was terrible, but after several updates the game is actually quite playable. Not exactly high praise, but we're talking about a game that was basically put together over the course of 7 to 9 months. And the fact that a game that was supposedly in development for 7 years was actually put together in like 7 to 9 months tells you more than enough. I also came into Aliens Colonial Marines with extremely low expectations. I expected the lowest of the low, but honestly I didn't find that. I didn't find anything mind-blowing either, but there are parts of the game worth experiencing. If I haven't lost you by this point, thanks for sticking around. For real this time, this is Aliens Colonial Marines. In Aliens Colonial Marines, you are Corporal Winters, one of the 300 plus Marines aboard the USS Sephora. You are on a recon and rescue mission in response to the distress signal from the USS Sulaco, which has mysteriously returned to LV-423. What follows is a story that clearly is trying very hard to be a proper homage and sequel to Aliens, but instead ends up only being notable for its horrible retcon over the death of a major character in the original films. Chances are good that you already know who I'm talking about, but just in case, I'll avoid spoilers. Along your journey, chests will burst, everything else explodes in fire, and xenomorphs drip acid everywhere. It's an understatement to say the body count in this entry is quadrupled over the original film, with hundreds of Marines and xenomorphs throwing themselves at each other. The story does actually try to account for this and notice the ever-diminishing forces on your side, but you never really feel any connection to them or the real weight of the circumstances outside of like maybe 1 or 2 scenes. If anything, most of the Marines you meet lack more than 2 personality traits apiece, even though the actors like Travis Willingham and Ashley Birch try their damnedest to work with such dull material. The only person who seems to be having any fun is Lance Henriksen, playing a surprisingly sassy version of Bishop. The visuals also aren't great. There is some decent lighting when it loads properly, but outside of that, there are some very authentic props. There are some things that genuinely look like they're from the Alien universe. And everything feels like it's consistent visually, it's just that it doesn't look very good, and what does look good is probably already salvaged from James Cameron's original film. As for when it comes down to gameplay, there's a strong divide here between 2 very uneven halves. On one hand, the campaign is a 6 to 8 hour long affair that can be played solo or cooperatively, both online for 4 and by a split screen for 2 on consoles. You don't want to play with multiple people though, as the game does nothing to accommodate the multiple players, so I just ended up playing by myself. Another key divider here is that on PC, there are a number of mods that substantially improve the campaign beyond what the original patches did. There are rebalances and graphical upgrades that get the campaign a little bit closer to that mythical vertical slice gamers were promised. On console, like me, you're stuck just with the game running properly as is. What that means is you'll be divided between shooting mildly stupid xenomorphs that present something of a threat, that try to rush you every chance they get as well, and incredibly stupid Weyland-Yutani mercenaries who pretty much are there to die and give you more armor. Now, personally, I don't have any big issue with the Whale and Utah mercenaries as a concept. Fighting just aliens would have gotten repetitive fast, and it does make sense for Whale and Utah to have some standing military force given just how many illegal activities they have going on. The excessive presence of the Marines is detrimental to the pacing and combat flow, but realistically, it's far from a deal breaker. It's just something that they had to do to try to break up the pacing within the small time that they had. And speaking of that, what's really disappointing though is that there's a lack of unique xenomorph types, except for those exclusive to the game's multiplayer. While you eventually do fight some spitters and at least one crusher, that's it. The final boss fight is terrible as well, making one of the most dangerous creatures in the alien universe look like a stoned idiot. It's clear in the time that they had, getting the AI working properly for all the alien types just didn't come together. It's incredibly disappointing and highlights just how rushed the entire development process was. Oh, and no, that stealth section is not the best part of the game, guys. It's a tediously boring 10 minutes log. And that's about it. The best thing the campaign does is unlock most of the marine weapons for you in the game's vastly superior multiplayer. While I won't deny that a few shootouts were kind of enjoyable in the campaign, the overall experience is completely throwaway. It's an average experience, not particularly bad or good. Now, as I was saying, the multiplayer is a completely different ballgame. The variety of maps available is excellent, the motion tracker is made absolutely vital, and the entire experience is just way too fun for its own good. It's disappointing to think that so many people have left the multiplayer behind, because even now, the player base is actually quite decent, and the game's surprisingly well balanced online. Xenomorphs use 3 different classes, while the Marines have 5 fully customizable loadouts. But somehow, I've yet to see one consistently unbeatable strategy. Among the battlefield, you can find unique weapon pickups for Marines to use, and Xenos can ascend into one of 2 advanced combat forms, either the Boiler from the Stealth section, or the Crusher from the Crusher boss fight. What also took me by surprise is just how much fun the game makes for support activities. Placing proximity mines, tensely checking your motion tracker, and calling out enemies is just as much fun as taking them down yourself. Getting a Marine to run right into your trap, or evading a Crusher through tight corridors is thrilling and really nails the experience. I honestly wish Sega had been smarter and would have cut its losses repackaging Colonial Marines as a downloadable only multiplayer focused title on these aspects alone. Clearly that would have been the better way to go, seeing as the game is still being actively played on last gen hardware, along with a thriving number of PC groups playing the game's Bug Hunt DLC, which also has its fair share of mods. Speaking of which, unless you bought the Bug Hunt DLC or the Season Pass, you're restricted to competitive multiplayer outside of the cooperative campaign. And seeing as I don't have the Season Pass or the DLC, I can't speak to Bug Hunt's quality. That said, I have heard surprisingly good things, and similarly good things about the game's DLC campaign, Stasis Interrupted. Take that with a heavy grain of salt, but if you actually do find yourself liking the game, be sure to look them up. Aliens Colonial Marines is going to be a game that will remain infamous for a lot of people, and it's easy to understand why. Yet in spite of all of that, when you look at it today, it's improved a fair deal. It still wouldn't have been the game of the year everyone was waiting for, but it would have likely merely garnered mediocre to average review scores if given a few more months' time to get polished. It's far from what it could be, but at the end of the day, competitive multiplayer is just fun enough to salvage this one for me. I know not a lot of people are going to like this, but I'm giving Aliens Colonial Marines a 6.5 out of 10. If you can't play the online multiplayer, it drops down to a solid 4.5, don't get me wrong. But if the option to fight online is available to you, then feel free to consider this one, especially if it's below $10.